So for this, you find any blank page, but I'm going to do this on page 35. So this is going to be called, I'm just going to call this regressions. Okay, so what you're doing in this section is you determine the equation from data or points. That's what we're doing. So there's going to be instances where we're just going to be giving you a bunch of information or data that has been observed and recorded, and so we have to come up with our equation. So just to give you a little foreshadow here, just a little quick view into the end of this lesson, is we're going to enter these values into basically like a spreadsheet. A lot of it revolves around statistics. That button you're going to use a lot for regression, so remember that. We're going to enter the points into our spreadsheet. This is X and Y. It's basically a table of values. Then we're going to look at the scatter plot of it. And this one has two bends, you can tell. One bend there, one bend here. So we know this is a cubic function. Then we're going to actually graph this. We're going to come up with our equation, and then the result of it will be a nice curve that goes through most of the points, if not all. So that is basically the purpose of today's lesson, to be able to come up with the equation that goes through those points, that models the points. And once we have that equation, we can figure out anything else within this time frame. Okay? So let's start from scratch here. I will clear everything. I basically want you to go to your main screen. So we all have the same settings. I'm going to ask you to go to mode, and then I want you to go all the way down to where it says Stat Diagnostics. I want you to turn that off, and go down one further, Stat Wizards. We don't want that on, we want that turned to the off position. That will ensure that you and I will see the same thing as we go through this process. Okay, so that's step number one. Okay, now I will write down the steps first, and then we will go through one together. So the first step, it's going to be a bit overwhelming, and after a while you're going to be masters at this, right? If you were in grade 11 applied, you already know this. But we enter, so if we have a table, let's make a little table here. It may look like this, or it may be a horizontal table. It doesn't matter. Okay, where you have it split like that, or like that. No matter what, the first is always our X, the second is our Y, no exceptions. If it's a horizontal table, the first row will be our X values, the second row will be our Y values. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter X into L1, and Y will be entered into L2. That's our spreadsheet. To do this, we're going to press Stat. So whenever there's a button to be pressed or a specific setting to enter, we press Stat, and then you're going to go to Edit. Edit, 3 dots, okay? That will get you to a spreadsheet where you're going to see L1 and L2. So that's how the first thing you do. So first column goes into L1, second column into L2. Same here, L1, L2. Number two, second step, is we're going to turn on plot 1. That's an important setting, and it's only for regressions that we do this. Only regressions, that's all I'm going to write down. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. If you're not doing a regression, meaning you're not accessing L1 and L2, you want this off, okay? Number 3, we're going to press Zoom, and then we're going to specifically select Zoom Stat, okay? You should see a scatter plot, okay? C, right? You should see scatter plot. Meaning you're going to see something like this, right? Or it could be something that is like this. This would be a linear. So it won't always be perfect, but you see that there's no turn really. The general direction is going up. So this would be a linear. You could have a scenario where you have that, you have a quadratic in your hands, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to look at the scatter plot. Number 4. By the way, this does not work unless plot 1 is turned on. So these go hand in hand, okay? If you press zoom stat and this plot 1 isn't turned on, it's not gonna find these points on your graph, on your window. So you want to make sure plot 1 is turned on. Next, we're gonna see, number 4 will be choose appropriate regression. So you're going to see, is it a cubic, is it a linear, or is it a quadratic, right? So we're going to press these buttons to get to that place. So we're going to press stat. Remember, that's very popular for regression. Stat. You're going to go to calculate. After pressing stat, you're going to go to calculate. And then you're going to select either linreg, quadreg, or cubic reg. Make sure you don't mix up linear reg with ln reg. Okay, linear reg is what you want for linear. Okay, so linear would be like this or like this. If it's quadratic, it would go like this or like this. If it's cubic, it depends. It can go like this, it can go like this, have 2 turns. You're going to have to just look at what do we know about a cubic. Most of the time it has 2 turns, but if it doesn't, it's just it's a 0 turn and it kind of looks like that. So we'll talk more about this. The province is usually going to tell you which one to perform, but I want you to be prepared for a scenario where it doesn't. Okay, so you're going to have to pick the right one. Next, you're going to see step 5 is going to see, you should see as an example, so let's say you pick linear regression, you should see linreg. And what we want to feed linreg is we want to give it the location for the x values to perform the regression. Then there's a comma. We're going to tell the regression where to get the y values. Another comma, I make it nice and big, okay? Where do you want to store the equation? And we're going to, unless I have multiple equations for this problem, we're going to generally just put it into y1. Now, for some of you, you need a refresher. Where do we get L1 from? L1, you got to press second and 1 button, like the number 1 button. To get L2, you press second and button number 2. To get Y1, we press alpha trace. Alpha trace, those are buttons to get to Y1. So that some of you might need a refresher on that. So if you do this right, if you select the right one, you should, if you pick linear regression, then you should follow with L1, L2, Y1. It will be the same with all of these. If you press quadratic regression, if that's the one you select, you still go L1, L2, Y1. Okay? Now, once you've done this, you press enter. Okay? And then you're going to write down the equation. You're going to write down the equation. Okay, that's important. That is usually going to be the main task, to state the equation. So that's what you're going to press. Okay, or that's what you're going to do. You're going to press enter after doing this, and then you write down the equation. Last but not least, you want a graph. Okay, so you want to press graph. And resulting curve should go through most, if not all points. If one is way off, check L1, L2 values. Then you have to go back and like, maybe I typed in one number wrong, maybe one of the zeros, like if it's instead of pressing 10, you pressed 1, maybe that didn't work out for you. So you need to make sure you make a note of that, okay? So this is basically how to perform a regression. So if you need to pause and write this down, I'm going to make it show up all on the same screen here, and then we'll continue with the example. All right, so one more thing that I want you to highlight is the commas. These are actual buttons you press. There is a comma button that you need to make sure you find, and I'll show you that. There's a comma button right there, okay, next to x squared above 7. So these are actually buttons, right? So there's a comma button that we press, okay? So that's very important, and there's only 2. Not if you don't do this right, it's going to complain about the syntax. Okay, here we go. 36 is our first example. Okay, so let's type this into our L1 and L2, and I'm gonna walk you through it, right? So we know that the first one is supposed to go into L1 and this is supposed to go into L2. So we press Stat, right? We want Edit, and I have stuff in there, which is already this information, but I'm gonna assume that we're gonna clear that. So to clear anything, you go to the very top and press Clear. Don't press Delete because it's gonna get rid of that column. Clear, Enter. Go over to the left, Clear, Enter. And let's type this in. So I'm going to start with this first one. 0, enter. 5, enter. 10, enter. And so forth. If they're negatives, press the negative button, not minus. Okay, so this is L1. Then I go over to L2 and I type that in. 5, 1.36. Oops, I made a mistake. 0.04, 1.705. 4.68, 5, 3.66. Should always match, right? If you don't have the same number of elements on both sides, you're going to get an error message. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 calls for turning on plot 1. So to quit this, you go second quit, or you could have gone straight to y equals and clear any equations that you have in there. Go over to plot 1 at the very top, hit enter, okay? Now we're going to press, the third step is zoom, and then we're going to go zoom stat, hit enter. You should see this, so we'll always zoom in to where the points are that you fed it, okay? So it kind of makes a nice window around it. Sometimes we'll have to adjust, just so you know. What I'm looking for, if it's a word problem, I want to see the y and the x-axis. So you may have to change your window later on. Okay, go back to graph. That's what you see. You look at this and you can tell this is a cubic regression. It's got one turn and another turn, right? It comes back down. If it had just looked like that, this could have also been a quadratic in a sense, right? Could have gone down and then back up. So you have to kind of see what is in, how much information do you have. In this case, you have enough information to tell that this is going back down. So it has to be a cubic regression. Let's perform the regression. We press stat. All right, that's the theme, stat. Now you're going to go over to calculate to the right. And here they are. There's linear regression, quadratic regression, cubic regression. We're going to pick cubic for this particular instance. Enter. We got to feed it L1, so I'm going to press second and then number 1, comma, L2. Second, 2 calls L2, comma. Now you want to feed it Y1, so you got to go alpha trace, and you can feed it any of the Y's. but we're going to select Y1, right? So you could do Y2, Y1, enter. You press enter again. And that is your cubic regression. That's the equation. So we're going to write that down. Determine the equation, right, for B here. So you just follow this model. A is negative 8.85. 2 decimals is fine. So basically, negative 8.85 x cubed, because it calls for ax cubed, and we know a is negative 8.85. There should never be 0. If a has like the first decimals being 0, then go to the third decimal, right? But you cannot have a 0 as the leading coefficient. Plus, this is positive, b is positive, 0.06 x squared. Okay, b x squared. C is negative 1, so it's negative x, that's it. And D is 5 if you round it to 2 decimals. That is your quadratic equation. So what the keys you would press is simply stat, calc, cubic regression. That is it. You can do more if you want, but that's bare minimum that I would expect. Okay, so that's your cubic regression. Now, technically, in the future, I'm going to ask you to first graph it before you write it down, because if your graph doesn't jive with your points, you're going to be off, right? So here we go. What time? Oh, I'm already at 60 minutes. So there is your graph. It works perfectly. And obviously, I would have to adjust my window if this had been a word problem, because I want to include this x-intercept here. So I'm going to go Window, change x max to, let's say, 60. And there you go. You see all the x-intercepts. You see the y-intercept. You see the min and the max. So now you could actually find out way more about this graph. So I'm going to ask you to practice this. If you go to pages 33 and 34, you practice this, like practice going through the steps. So basically on 33, try that one. Figure out the equation of best fit. Then on 34, you try it with this one, okay? I will say graphing for now is optional, but if you graph these ones, you can actually just use these points to help you out. But I would say this. I would first do my regression and figure out the whole graph, look at the whole graph on your screen, and that's the one you transfer onto this grid. That's my suggestion for you. Okay, that's it. Thank you.